It was a chilly Wednesday night in April 2015. My girlfriend, my 9-year-old little brother, and I decided to catch a late-night horror film at a small, local theater, one of those quiet places where you're lucky if 5 people show up on a weekday. I had Thursdays off from college that semester, so the timing was perfect. As we stepped into the screening room, it seemed like we had the place to ourselves until my brother nudged me and pointed toward the upper left corner. A man sat there, slouched in a dark gray hoodie, barely moving. It was a little unsettling, but nothing out of the ordinary. We chose seats a few rows from the top, right in the middle, with a railing in front to rest our feet. We each left an empty seat between us oddly. I know, especially with my girlfriend there, but it felt more casual since my little brother was tagging along. I sat on the end, closest to the aisle and unfortunately, closest to the stranger. The previews wrapped up quickly, and the lights faded into pitch black. Only the flicker of the screen lit the room now. The silence was quickly broken by my little brother rustling through a noisy candy bag he'd smuggled in. We shushed him. He quieted down. Just a few minutes into the movie, I thought I heard something shifting sound coming from the back rows. Over the crackling candy wrappers, it was faint, but distinct. I turned slightly and spotted something that made me pause. The man in the hoodie had moved. He was now a row lower than before. That was strange, but not alarming. Maybe he wanted a better view. Another 5 minutes passed. A tense scene was playing, and just as I was starting to settle in, I heard it again, a soft thump from behind. I glanced over my shoulder. He had moved again. Closer. One more row down. I leaned toward my girlfriend, whispering, "Don't look now," but he's creeping closer, row by row. She gave a half-hearted shrug, more annoyed than worried. Still, I couldn't shake the weird feeling growing in my gut. I told myself, if he moves again, I'll say something. And sure enough, he did. When I looked again, just out of instinct this time, he was now only 3 rows behind us, and no longer hugging the wall. He'd shifted toward the center toward us. I nudged my girlfriend again. She turned around, then looked at me with a tense, uneasy expression. "Should we move?" she asked under her breath. I shook my head. No, not yet. But at that point, I couldn't focus on the movie at all. I was staring straight at the screen, but all I could feel was his presence, like he was watching us, drilling holes in the back of my head. I told myself maybe he was just trying to find the perfect seat. Maybe I was being paranoid. Then I turned around again. Now he was just 2 rows behind us. And this time he wasn't sitting at the end of the row. He had moved directly behind us. Must have been my imagination. But then it happened again. Louder. Closer. Hello. I muttered under my breath and turned to look behind me. Nothing. Just empty seats and shadows. The movie continued, but my focus was gone. I was too aware of the space behind me. The whispering didn't stop. It only got more distinct. It wasn't part of the movie. I was sure of it. It was low, frantic, like someone muttering through clenched teeth. But there was no one there, or so I thought. Suddenly, just as I leaned forward to get up, something moved. 2 rows up from me, a figure rose. It didn't step into view or make any noise, it just appeared. Slowly, stiffly, like it had been crouching behind the seats, waiting. Its arms hung straight down like dead weight. Its head was tilted slightly forward, staring right at me unmoving. No blinking, no expression, just watching. I didn't even scream. I bolted. I tore out of the theater and into the lobby, but to my horror it was empty too. No staff. No one at the ticket counter. Not a soul in sight. I kept running. Didn't stop until I reached my car. I slammed the door, locked it, and just sat there in the dark, gasping for air. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely start the engine. Once I got home, I tried to call the theater. No one answered. Not that night, not the next day. And honestly, I didn't want to push it. I've never gone to a movie alone since. And to this day, I still wonder, was it real? Or did I sit in that theater, completely alone, with something that was never supposed to be seen? When I was 16, I got one of those typical teen jobs working evenings at a small movie theater in Huntington, Long Island. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid, and most nights were easy, especially during the summer. But there was one night that changed how I look at empty theaters forever. It was a quiet Monday night around 11 p.m. The last 2 showings were wrapping up early, which was rare. Usually, I'd be there until midnight or later. That night, it was just me and Kathy, the woman who ran the concessions. She was in the middle of closing up when she called out, asking me to sweep the floors. I nodded and got to work. A few minutes later, Kathy told me she was heading out for a bit and would be back within the hour to finish locking up. That left me completely alone in the building, something that wasn't uncommon but always left me with a weird feeling. Something about those dim theater halls late at night just felt vulnerable. Like anything could happen. I swept quickly and then sat on the carpeted steps next to my ticket podium, passing time on my old flip phone playing some knockoff version of Tetris. The silence was heavily broken only by the distant hum of air conditioning and the occasional muffled sound from the movie rooms. Then the front entrance door opened loudly. My head snapped toward the lobby. I couldn't see the door directly because of the angled hallway, but I waited for someone to step into view. I thought it might be Kathy coming back. She was the only one who had a key, but something felt off. The door sounded too forceful, like someone yanked it open. "Hey, Kathy," I called out, trying to sound casual. But it wasn't her. A man probably in his late 50s walked into view. He wore a bulky, old brown jacket that looked like it had seen better decades. His eyes locked onto mine immediately, and he just stood there. I tried to sound firm. "Sorry, sir, we're closing for the night." His eyes didn't leave mine. His expression was blank, but there was something off in the way he held himself, almost tense. He muttered something I didn't quite catch, but it sounded like, "Is Kathy here?" I shook my head and said no. Without another word, he pointed toward one of the benches and mumbled, "I'll just wait over there." I didn't know what to say. He wasn't aggressive, but something about his presence made my stomach turn. I hated confrontation, so instead of pushing it, I sat back down on the steps and pulled out my phone again, more for comfort than anything. I quietly started typing a text to Kathy. "Some guy is here asking for you. Creeping me out. Come back." Of course, typing on an old flip phone took forever. And by the time I hit send, I looked up and the man was staring directly at me from across the lobby. He hadn't blinked. He hadn't moved. Just watched. Trying to break line of sight, I got up and moved a few steps to a bench partially hidden by a wall. In my anxious teenage brain, it felt like a smart idea. It wasn't. I realized all too quickly that I'd just placed myself where I couldn't see what he was doing. I stood up to head back to my original spot, but he was gone. A cold wave hit my spine. I scanned the lobby. Just then, Kathy returned. Just as the final few moviegoers were leaving, I rushed over. X had gotten into some trouble with a man who'd threatened her. He had come to the theater that night because he was convinced someone was going to hurt her and he was trying to protect her. The police arrived minutes later. They searched the building and brought out a man in handcuffs, an older guy who looked like he belonged in a gangster movie. I never saw Kathy again. She stopped coming to work after that. And no one ever really explained the full story. All I know is that I was alone in a theater that night and I was one dumb move away from being face to face with a man who might have been ready to kill. That was another true story. If you're still watching, you're one of the brave ones. Most don't make it this far. Subscribe to Horror Stories and hit the bell because the next horror stories drop soon. Stay scared. Stay safe. We'll see you in the dark.